All right. Hey, y'all. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so if you're a Black mom, I've been telling you through video after video of videos to book a kid-free vacation, right? And I'm so excited about this video today because I am going to be speaking to someone who has been taking kid-free vacations since before I could even consider myself to be a mom. The reason why I'm doing this series on kid-free vacations with interviews of moms who have made it happen is because I know every mom situation is a unique situation, right? So I am married. My husband is here. I live with the grandparents of my children, right? And so the way I'm able to leverage my tribe, the way I'm able to take kid-free vacations is going to be very different than somebody who may be an empty nester, who may be a single mom, who may have a father who's not as involved in the situation. So I wanted to give y'all all the types of scenarios, right? To let you know that it is possible, regardless of how your setup is set up, to be able to take the kid-free vacations that you want to take. If you're not familiar with this channel, my name is Inez. I am a life and travel coach, and I help Black moms confidently take the kid-free vacations that they want to take. Now, that includes getaways with your girls, getaways with your boo, getaways by yourself, right? Just any type of getaway that you need in order to have some adult fun. If you're somebody who is interested in that, make sure that you like and subscribe to this channel so that you can know when I release a new video or when I'll go live. Okay, so welcome, Cherae.
Hi. How are you?
So, Cherae Robinson and I have been friends since we were children, okay? Since we were children, okay? We go all the way back to Morgan State University, back in the day before she also was a mother.
Whew,
As well.
yeah.
Okay.
It feels like eons ago.
Eons. Okay.
Who is that person?
Yes. So, and the crazy thing is that Cherae, it's funny because before we were on this, she was talking about, how she had received a message from somebody saying like they love how she lives her life exactly how she wants to live on the internet. And that is like key Cherae, right? And I feel like someone, especially as a mom, right? I think you have always lived your life as a mom exactly how you wanted to, for the most part, regardless of how people viewed how moms should be, right?
Yeah.
And what a part of that has been including, one, plenty of adult grown woman fun, right? And two, taking the breaks, taking the getaways that you wanted to take, right? And so I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, and then I'm gonna add some stuff in just in case you forget to add it. But introduce yourself to the people, and then share with us what you do, what you've done, and what you believe like the main benefit of adult fun has brought to your life.
No, for sure. So my name is Cherae Robinson. I live in Brooklyn, New York. My dog is a hater, as you can tell. But I live here in Brooklyn. I am an entrepreneur. I'm a techie. I am a curator, a community builder, all the things. I'm a scuba diver. I'm obsessed with karaoke. I currently my full-time work is as head of platform and community at Flybridge Capital Partners, which is a venture capital fund in New York City and Boston. Flybridge was also the biggest investor in my own company, Tastemakers Africa, which is a travel technology platform that lets people book unique experiences in African cities, specifically with creatives and hospitality entrepreneurs. I built that company in 2014, really with a mission to just disrupt what people think about travel in Africa, make traveling the continent more accessible and also like more sexy in the minds of people, and put actual money into the pockets of African folks across Nigeria, South Africa, Morocco, Kenya, Egypt, Senegal, you name it. Just putting money in the pockets of incredible people, making African cities dynamic places to visit. And I'm super proud of that work. When I look at where we are today, Burna Boy on the radio, selling out Madison Square Garden. When I started Tastemakers, people were not thinking that this was possible, but I always knew like that this was going to be the next wave. And I'm just super proud of the work we did at Tastemakers, the work my broader community who supported that venture did. And I'm just really excited about the place we are now as Black people and just the seismic shift we've been able to experience in the last decade. And other than that, I am mom to Trace. My son is a 15-year-old young trombonist, also here in Brooklyn, who I have carried all around the world, which I'm sure we'll jump into a bit more. But that's a little bit about me. I'm a little bit of a nerd, a bit of a creative, sometimes intense. I'm a Scorpio. But yeah, that's the best intro I could come up with for this.
I think that is perfect. I think it's perfect because, and also she's also a DJ, y'all. Like, what you don't know is she be spinning the tunes. Okay. So this is so good because your whole, I don't even know where to start. Right. So if I think about like, how old were you when you had Trace?
24.
24. So
cheering. A youth.
And one of the things that I know about you is you've always been the person who has been connecting people and has been creating experiences, right? Even before Tastemakers. Mm-hmm. So in the beginning, right, when you were young and Trace was young, right? How did you, and also this is the other thing, Cherae has always been a single mom, right? So the main breadwinner, the main caregiver of your son, and you've always lived for the most part away from your family, right? So not necessarily someone who has family around to help. So when Trace was young, how did you find time, right? But also how did you mentally, as a mom of someone young, make it okay to find time for yourself to do the things that you wanted to do just as a woman?
Yeah, I think some of it was a decision. And I'm a big believer in most things in life just start with a decision. Like as simple as that sounds, like most things are a decision. And I think when I had my son, it was unplanned. And it took me maybe a year to find myself. Like I had this like deep feeling of like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to live this life that I wanted? And like, I knew that like things probably weren't going to work out with his dad and I. And I was just really sad. You know, I was obviously happy about this new little life I had, but it just wasn't the plan. And I'd always had this vision of like being a world traveler and living and working all over the world. Like that's who I wanted to be, like for as long as I can remember. And I really wasn't sure how I was going to do that with this little person. And so I remember I was in Chicago. My son was born in Chicago and like going through stuff with his dad and realizing like, okay, first things first, I cannot stay in Chicago. I don't know nobody here. And like, this is a lot. And so I was like, all right, let me at a minimum get back to like the career I know, because I had been working at the Center for Disease Control, doing like a collaboration with the World Health Organization. And then I had moved to Chicago because my son's dad was trying to like find his feet. And then I was like, well, I can't be doing this. I need to go back to Atlanta, find myself like another global role. Because at the time, I definitely didn't have any money. I was working in nonprofit. So I definitely didn't have any money to be like booking flights and taking trips and hurting feelings. Like I didn't have time to do any of those things. I didn't have any money. And so I was like, well, at a minimum, let me find like a job that will like, one, speak to like my passion, but also like give me this ability to travel. So I moved back to Atlanta and I worked for CARE. And my job initially didn't involve a lot of travel. But I think the second thing beyond like making a decision, so the decision I made was like, all right, I don't know how this is going to happen, but I'm still going to chase the dream I had before I became a mom. So that was like the decision in my head. And so it was like, I don't really know how it's going to happen or going to come together. But the decision and the energy I'm setting in motion is like, we're not changing the plan. We're not going to plan B. We still going for plan A. And that was like the mental model I was working from. And so I moved back to Atlanta, got a job at Care. And then, so the second set of decisions I made was about recognizing who I could be in the world. And so when I say that, I mean, when I was in high school, I moved out of my mom's house. I went to live with my aunt. I was in a homeless shelter for a second. Like I had like a kind of a cuckoo upbringing a little bit. But even then, I think because of that experience, I had to learn to build relationships with people outside of my family. Like my guidance counselor paid for my college visits. And so I kind of knew that as a human, you have like your family and then you have your friends, but you also just get to make connections in the world and you get to go beyond the surface should you choose to be vulnerable. And so when I had my son and I moved back to Atlanta, I ended up getting really close with my boss at Care. Her name was Lerma Rackley. And she also was a single mom. And she also had traveled the whole world. So now I had this like example of like, here's this lady that has like crushed in her career. She's been all over the world. She's the public relations director of one of the biggest humanitarian organizations in the world. And she's like incredible. Like her son's dad is Jill Scott Heron. Like this lady is like next level amazing. And so I think part of it was a decision to be vulnerable about who I was as a way to connect more meaningfully with other people. And so that was like the next decision. Like once I realized that that was a part of my life, that was like the next set of decisions. And in doing that, I mean, Lerma, there will be times when like Lerma or even the CEO of Care, who was at the time the only Black woman CEO of a major global humanitarian organization, Helene Gale, who is like another Black woman rock star you should know. Like if I had an after work function that I was trying to go to, like Helene or sometimes Lerma or Helene's niece, like they would watch my son or my line sisters that were in Atlanta. Like I spoke who I wanted to be and also why. I think that's also important. Like it wasn't like, oh, I just want to do this for the gram. The gram didn't even exist yet at the time. Like there was no gram. It was me and my suitcase and my kid. But I think, you know, it's a very long way of saying like step one was making a decision for myself and like anchoring my path to that. And I think step two was enlisting others in my success, enlisting others in my journey, by showing up for them in a vulnerable way. And I think those two things initially are what helped me. And I think the final thing that was more internal was like I had to make a decision about what motherhood meant to me. And like, especially as someone who like never really thought about having kids, like was not on the agenda. I really had to decide like what my philosophy on motherhood was. And the one thing that I really till now like firmly believe is that happy moms make happy kids. And so for me, it was like, well, if I give up on my dream for life, I'm probably going to be miserable. And I don't want to teach my son to be miserable. And I don't want to teach him to give up on his dreams. Like that's just not a lesson I want to teach. And so at a very high level, I think those three decisions really set in motion what became my life after, especially as it relates to like travel and joy and those kind of things.
Honey, this is so good. If y'all don't have a notebook, get one right now, okay? This is a masterclass. I'm gonna have to sell this later. Like, seriously, like, look, we about to dive in because so many things you've hit on that like are so important with regard to like making a decision. So one of the things that I share with my clients, when it comes to like taking a trip or whatever, you know, taking a getaway, or even just taking time away, right? To just be a woman is you have to decide. And that decision isn't like, I think I'm going to do it. It's like a commitment, right? It's like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to honor my word to myself, regardless of the obstacles that show up.
Yeah.
Right? Like that type of decision. Like, and what I tell moms is I was like, you do it all the time for your kids. Right? If you make a decision about your kids and something comes up, best believe you're not going to be like, oh, well, no, you're going to be like busting through barriers to make sure they get what they're supposed to have. Right? Yeah. And so you also have to treat yourself that way.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's really important in doing these types of things. Like, I love the thought of like, I'm still going to live the dream I had because I had that same feeling. Like, I remember, after my first daughter, True, like having a bit of postpartum depression and just really being like, I don't even know how to be me anymore. I really just only know how to be a mom. And that's very odd because I've been me for 36 years, right? Because I had my children late in life. And so, but what I did know was I had to get back to me. Right? It was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but best believe I must get back to me. Right? Yeah. And so that's how I ended up like hiring my first coach. Like the Lerma thing, it's funny because I know these names, right? Clearly. Like, I know these names, but what I wasn't paying attention to in your journey with them was that they were the evidence. Right? So one of the things I say is, if you don't believe something is possible, just find one person who has done it.
Yep.
That's the evidence that it's possible. Right? So if you're a mom and you're like, well, I don't have this and I don't have that and I don't have this, so I can't X, just find one person. Right? If you can find one person, best believe there's plenty other ones.
Yeah.
Right? And like, that's all the evidence you need. And it's so crazy to see the life you created, right? Because it is very much founded in what Lerma and Helene were able to do, right? As moms, as business women, as full-blown women, right? Like that's amazing. Like, it's amazing. And also the importance of like, teach your kids and be who you want your kids to be.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's, to me, is a part of the importance of raising them. It's not just taking care of them and giving them what they need, right? And what they want, but it also is being an example. Because, like they're saying, like, your kids don't listen to what you say. They listen to what you do.
Oof.
And when I think about True and Free, I'm like, I want to be the woman that I want them to be. Yeah. Right? So I'm always up under them. Right? That's who they're going to be. I can't have them being that. Like,
no.
They too much to get in the world. Right? I need them to know. I need to be the evidence for them. Right? You are the evidence for Trace. Right? Of this is like, and even for this, from a son perspective, like, if you have sons, you need to be the woman that you want him to go for. Right? Yeah. You are showing him like you can do all these things and also be a mom, right? And also be a businesswoman. So these are all like, they're so important. What I would say is, one of the things I've always admired about you is your ability to build adult friendships. A lot of people be like, honey, after high school, I don't have any new friends, no new friends, right? Or after college, or like just in motherhood, it can be very hard sometimes to build new friendships because you're doing the most, right? Yeah. You're so ingrained in your little microcosm that you're not even out in the world. Like, I've even seen it for myself. Yeah. And it's just easier, right? It's just easier to continue with life than it is like go out and do the things. But I know that adult friendships are really important, right? In your motherhood journey, and definitely mom friendships too. So what I want to know is like, how did you, because you have other mom friends too, right? That have been evidence for you, but also that you built relationships with in Brooklyn and just around the world. How do you develop these friendships? Like, how do you go from like, I just met you, right, to I'm comfortable with you having my son for more than one day, right?
Ooh, child.
Okay.
I feel like it's part crazy and part intention, to be honest. This is like full, so I lived in Mexico City for a few years, right outside of Mexico City for a few years when my son was between the ages of 2 and 5. And then I got into a serious relationship and decided to move to Brooklyn for the first time. And I put my son in this Montessori school that was like a feeder school for Black kids to go into like elite private schools in New York City. More on that later. This is not where we landed because of my traveling ass. So there be trade-offs.
Mm-hmm.
All that to say, one of the things I knew I needed were mom friends. And then again, like I was like, I don't know if I need other people who also had their kids at 20 something. I was like, I don't know that that's going to give me what I need. What I need are references. I need to see people with kids similar age as my son who also have similar philosophies. And so the first mom friend I made in Brooklyn was my friend Louisa. And she's like half Jamaican, half British, grew up in the UK, husband's from Ghana, also from the UK, but they met in Brooklyn or in New York. But Louisa, her backstory was she was like a party promoter and like a screenwriter. And so she was very much a creative. And her husband was like the head of culture, or is like the head of culture at Bacardi. And so as much as they were parents, they were out here in the world, like in the streets, in the world, doing things, and so part of it was me recognizing that if I tried to make friends with moms that had like really traditional views, it probably wasn't going to work for me. Like they would probably be telling me I was crazy with everything I wanted to do or anything like, and I probably would have been also Judgy Judy.
Right.
On them. So I was like, I need to find my like wild woman mom tribe. Like this is who I need to find. And Louisa was very much like the passport to the like wild woman architect moms.
I love it.
Like she archetype, I should say. She very much was that. So I became friends with Louisa, and you were asking like, how do you get to the point? Sometimes it's a necessity. Like I remember something came up and I was like, ooh, our kids are friends. Can my kids stay at your house? And sometimes I think a lot of that like is like us having to like release our ego and like our ideas about what's proper and like also release our fear of being told no.
Come on. Yes.
One of my homegirls has this app she built called Wiggle Room. And it's basically for like friends who want to be able to like provide childcare for their friends, but like have a hard time with that ask. So you just like sign up to be in the wiggle room. And that way you just press a button, be like, versus the like, hey girl, cause like that conversation can be a block for people. Like that, especially if it's for pleasure or joy. A lot of us have no problem saying, oh, if it's for work, oh, I got to go out of town for work. Can you help me? But it's like we have shame around, oh, I'm a single mom and I got a new bae. I'm trying to go on vacation with this man. Because that'd be why I have to, like, new bae wants to take me to fill in the blank country. You got me, girl? I think we have to get in a space of not only being enlisted in our friends' like professional success, but in our like life and soul success and in our success of our pleasure and our joy and our peace. Like we should not be afraid of we should not be afraid of asking for release of any sort. Whether it's a date, whether it's a trip, whether it's a trip for you to, whether it's a massage, like, you should not, and in your friendships, the worst that could happen is no. Like, that's literally the worst that could happen. And so Louisa and I ended up, literally till now, it could be 3 days before she go, and she like, ooh, girl, I forgot to sort Otis out, and me and Colin are leaving next week. The way Otis is at my house 2 days later, and it's also like, to be honest, it's actually, especially if you're a Black woman or a Black or brown woman, like, this is also like ancestrally who we are.
Absolutely.
And so I think for me, it's also been like just leaning into like community in a real way. Now there's balance. You got to make sure you're finding a balance. You're not taking all the time. Like, there's nuance and balance. And I've had to have my own lessons in that. But that's all just like a part of the journey, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, like, building mom friendships tied to the women that they are versus the fact that we're moms with kids at the same place was a big unlock. Because I think a lot of people make mom friends and they're like very superficial. And I think I just can't operate that way. Ooh, if this Slack don't.
Hey, it's my life.
I'm sorry. I am at work.
Y'all don't know that's a Slack, a notification.
But yeah, I think the other thing was like, rather than, yes, I wanted mom friends, but it was more about wanting more friends with a shared perspective. Part of that shared perspective was that they're moms, but the whole rest of them as people was also like very much important. And so leaning into those relationships and that comfort question, like, I don't know that I was like, I mean, they're not going to kill him. Like, it was just kind of like, kind of being more open to the idea that what I don't need them to replicate my experience of child rearing.
Mm-hmm.
I need them to keep my child safe. I need to trust them as people enough to know like the environment. But there's a benefit to him spending time like with this other family or with this other person. He gets to see things that he's not going to get in my household. So I think I also like looked at it as more, I looked at it in a more expansive way than in like a fear-based way.
And that's so important because in life, right, we won't always be there for our kids. At some point, they're going to have to stand alone in situations without us, right? And the more we can prepare them to be who they are and who we've instilled in them in rooms that we're not in, under conditions that we can't necessarily control, right? And still be confident in like, no, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I don't do. That's how you really prepare them for life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Creating an environment where they are independent, right? And not dependent on mom or the environment that mom creates, right?
Yeah.
Or the comfort that mom brings.
Yeah.
It's so important. And the funny thing is, when I was young, I used to travel a lot, and it didn't show up in my brain like, oh, I've always been doing this, until probably I had to be in my 30s. But as I look back, like, I used to spend my whole summer in New Jersey, right? Now I was raised in North Carolina. My family is from Jersey. I spent the whole summer, like 3 full months, without seeing my mother at all. Right? At all. I don't even remember having conversations with her. Like, and now as I'm a mom, I was like, girl, you was really getting over, wasn't you? Like, you had the whole summer out. Like,
me and Monica. Is
you gonna come get True and Free for the whole summer? Like, I'm just saying. Like, but I'm like, I developed Inez through those years. Like, I was with my great grandmother. I was with my great uncles. I was with my cousins from New York and New Jersey, right? I am able now as a woman to show up in most rooms and be completely okay with like, this is what I do, this is what I don't do. I'm gonna be my full self, animation and all, right? If you're comfortable, okay. If you're uncomfortable, you'll be all right. Like, because I did that for years as a kid. And so when I think about like creating an environment that my children can do that in. I find that to be so important to do. Like, and I feel like my mother got the time she needed, but also I got the time that I needed, right? To be able to form. I love the idea of like enlisting in the pleasure, right, of your friends, right? And it made me think about like surviving versus thriving.
Yeah.
Right. Like a lot of times we like, well, girl, if it's something that you just have to do for X, B, or C, or if it's an emergency or something bad happened, right? Like I was talking to someone, a mom on the phone, and she was talking about how, you know, she feel like she doesn't have a tribe and blah, blah. And I was like, if your husband had to go to the hospital and you could not take your children, who would you take them to? And she shared her sister. And I was like, that's your tribe, right? You may not be comfortable yet asking, right? You might not be comfortable in potentially hearing the no. You may not be comfortable even with the thoughts you feel about yourself in asking, right? Whatever you tell yourself about yourself as a mom, because you need the help, but you do have the tribe, right? That's not a thing. You do have the tribe. You just have to get past the mental blockers to leverage them, right? To use them and to tell yourself a different story.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, I think a lot of times moms will use the excuse of like, I don't have anybody to watch my kids. Right. I don't have anybody. My family doesn't live here. You know, but what I love about your story is like building the friends who represent who you want to be. Right. And in some way kind of represent who you already are. And it has nothing to do with the fact that they're moms. Like, right. It's just like, because being a mom is one of the things that you are.
Yeah,
but there's so many other things. Did y'all hear the intro? There's so many other things that you are. And so it's important to feed those things and to have women who can support you in that journey. And I love that. I'm actually going to use that. I actually am using that kind of, but I don't think I have friends who right now, I have mom friends who are who I am, right? They enjoy, I got a net here. They enjoy travel. They're building their businesses. Some of them are married, some of them are not, right? But what I do want to incorporate is more mom friends who are who I want to be. Right? Like who are about this fun life at 50 with their kids and taking trips with their husband and leaving their kids for 3 months. Like that's what I need more of in my life. So I'm gonna need to join the Wiggle Room app and send me the link for that. So
it is it.
Well as, you know, just so as I build those friends, I can just wiggle into having them with True and Free. Like, I love the idea of this app, by the way. Like, I think, you know, I definitely need to partner with them in some way because clearly, like, clearly. So I want to talk about like how you deal with mom guilt and mom shaming, right? So to me, mom guilt comes from you, right? It's you talking to you about why this isn't right, why you shouldn't do this, you know, just the things you say to yourself. Mom shaming comes from other people, like you shouldn't be, or you doing too much, or these type of things. Like, how do you deal with these two concepts?
Yeah. I'll start with the guilt. It's funny, when I was younger, I didn't really have it. I think I was very like, he gonna be all right. He gonna be all right. And I mean, part of it was, it was better than how I grew up. And so I was just very much like, we're already ahead. Like, it's just, I very much like had that thought. And I think it's funny, my mom guilt has rarely come from travel. It's come from other things. Like, oh, my son's dad is not in the house and he's you know, starting off already behind, like this kind of thing. It's rarely been about travel until recently. And I think now that my son's a teenager, and especially, I mean, I took my son out of formal school for a couple years to move to Africa. Like I definitely did some things out of what most people would do. Like, you know, I definitely was like, he'll learn from the world. and I looked up world schooling, and I was just gonna like I definitely have, you know, done some things, not always in the most consideration for my son. Like I don't want to make it sound, I don't want to over glorify certain decisions. And when we came back to the US, there are things about my son where he's like light years ahead of his peers in ways that are really meaningful to like who he's going to be as a man. But then there are other things, like certain academic things, where like he's in a different place or he indexed on another part. And so that's been really hard, especially coming back into like end of middle school, high school. And so there are certain things that like we're adjusting for now. Couldn't necessarily go to the schools I thought I would be able to get him into because where he is on the like, so there are things that, you know, I sit with as like, how are they going to impact his life, you know, in the long term, especially around education. But what has helped that piece, because I think most of my mom guilt centers around that. What has helped is speaking to just incredible people who, even if their mama and daddy stayed right put, just academics wasn't their thing and they still turned out amazing. And I think having to, I very much got to where I was because I was always like academically gifted. Even when I was fighting and cutting school, them A's was still hitting.
Rolling out.
You know, I still was churning out an A, you know? And so a lot of opportunity opened up for me, full scholarship to college, you know, all those kind of things. People enlisted in my success because of my grades. I was personable and I had good grades. And so I put a lot of that onto my son. So I'm like, oh, he's an introvert and these grades are not hitting. Who's going to help him? And I was very much projecting my pathway to the life I wanted to live onto my son. And I really had to realize that whether, like, all of us are going to do some damage to our kids one way or another. It doesn't have to be severe, but we all going to do something that our kid at one point is going to be like, that really affected me. And it's not going to be like, that's just what it is. And so I had to kind of like, take that on. But also realize like I get to be his parent until I die. And so, you know, yeah, maybe there's some trade-offs that like he doesn't appreciate, but like my huge value with my son is like transparency and openness. So we've like talked about these things. We've talked about them in therapy. We've talked about them just me and him. You know, we've worked through things. And so I think that has helped a lot with the mom guilt. And my son affirms me. He's like, Mom, I've had like such an incredible childhood and it's really different than everybody else. And I think, you know, having that from my son has helped a lot as well. But also like what I was getting to before was just kind of like our kids have their own journey. Like, yes, they can follow in our footsteps, but they can also decide, nah, he might be like, I don't want to go nowhere. Right. That is not for me. Yeah. Like my life is going deep right here. There was a TikTok of a woman who has a son, and it was mad funny. She's a Sagittarius rising. I'm big into astrology, if you can't tell. So she's a Sagittarius rising, and her son is a Cancer. My son is a Cancer. I'm also a Sagittarius rising. And she was like, for all of my followers that always judging me for not taking my son on trips, here's a compilation of my son on trips. And it's her son going like this. And she's like in the front, and her son in the back like, okay, Mom, it's literally my son. And so she was like, and here's me by myself. And then her son at home, happy by himself. And she was like, don't do me. And so also was like, you got to recognize like the kids you have and work through it. So that's like the guilt side. I think the shaming side, love it or hate it, I've never been good about listening to people that I haven't put in a circle of trust ever. Like if you ain't in my circle of trust, I don't really give a shit. Like I don't care. Like I don't care what you think.
When I tell y'all this is the true proof, I mean this is the true proof. Like, and it don't matter what position they hold. Like it just,
you ain't in my circle of trust.
Right.
It just boop, bounces off the fro. I don't know. I didn't hear it. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I can't. So I think the mom shame, I haven't thought a ton about what people think. I care about what my kid thinks. That's what I care. But speaking of that circle of trust, I've also had girlfriends be like, "Oh, girl, what we doing for Trace for a little bit? Maybe we need to, and because they're in my circle of trust, those have been moments where I've been like, okay, maybe I'm over indexing
Right.
on the fun.
Right.
Maybe I'm over indexing. Maybe I need to reel it in, and so when you have a circle of trust, you trust them and you
Right.
sort of, so I don't really feel mom shame ever, but sometimes you need someone to like give you some guardrails every now and again. I tend to date men that are a lot more structured than me, so that helps too. So yeah, that's how I think about those things.
I love it. And it's interesting because I think the way, so this is the thing as I view it. The reason why you would not have mom guilt about travel, because I feel the same way. Like, I don't have mom guilt about going on a getaway.
No.
I don't feel like the only thing I might have an inkling of sadness about is how True and Free be sad sometimes. True, like, I don't want you to go.
Yeah.
I need to go too. But other than that, girl, I'm just like, I will see you when I get back, boo. Like, I don't have that guilt at all. And I think it's because when you're a person, right? Or even if you're a mom, right? If you've gotten to the point where you understand who you are, right? Like, I am very clear on who I am. And I was just having a conversation with my husband last night. I was like, it doesn't matter how old I get, how many kids I have, what I'm doing. I will always be someone who has a high value for travel. It will always be a high value. Even in the pandemic, nobody was traveling. Nobody was like, oh, we ain't never going to be able to travel again. I'm plotting and planning. Like, so how am I going? I mean, I may not fly out of the country, but I'm definitely going somewhere. Like,
when you packed that child up and went to Mexico,
honey, like,
ciao.
Like, it just will always be a very high value of mine, and I know that about myself. So if you know who you are and you know what you value, and you know that it is key to your framework and your foundation, you can't feel guilty about it.
No.
Right? And you like that about yourself. Like, you can't feel guilty about it, right? Mm-hmm. And so, like, I have this saying, like, where you want to go is tied to who you're meant to be. Right? Mm-hmm. So, like, the places that are in your spirit to, like, oh, I feel like I want to go to, that's because there are parts of your identity that you're going to find there. There's pieces to the puzzle, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and it's going to uncover certain things, right? Even if I think about, so what y'all don't know is backstory. Cherae is the reason why I know my husband, right? Basically, like, because she was planning a trip for Chasemakers to South Africa. I'm like, oh, I want to go to South Africa. Right. 2 weeks in South Africa. I definitely want to go. Like, Essence Fest in South Africa. Yeah. Something about me was like, I need to be on this trip. Go on the trip. Literally 3 days before we come back from the United States, I meet my now husband. Right? Like, now, had I been like, oh, no, like, I just don't know. And, it's this much money. And, like, there are pieces of you in the world. There are pieces of you in the United States. Right? The places where you want to go, there are pieces of you there. Right? And so I'm like, I know this is a value. And I also know that where you want to go is tied to who you're meant to be. There's transformation there. I love that. I have no guilt at all about it. I'm just like, girl, I can't wait till y'all old enough to see how much this is true. So y'all can go too. Like, so I love that because I'm in the same vein of that. Yeah. I think sometimes that when moms have the guilt, it's because they're not clear on who they are. Right? They feel like who they are is mom. Right? And so it feels like they're stepping outside of their values as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to leaning into their values, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's very important if you're a mom, and this is the importance of taking a getaway, even if it's a staycation in your city. You need time to really just get clear on who you are outside of the titles you have, the job you have, the wife you are, the mom you are. Like, who are you? Right?
Yeah.
If you had to introduce yourself and you couldn't say the title at your job, you couldn't say you were a mom, and you couldn't say you were a wife, what would you say? Right? Do you know? If you don't know, you have to spend some time figuring that out. Because when things like this happen, where you feel the mom guilt, you're able to, like I like to say, crush mom get on sight. Like, because you know, like, this is really who I am. And I'm not leaning outside of my values. I'm leaning into my values of who I am, period. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and the mom shaming child, I don't even have people in my circle who shame me.
Imagine.
Who gonna check me?
They tried.
Go check me. And this is why I say, like, your circle is very important. It's very important because it's either going to be your trampoline or your jail. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's either gonna be like, go girl, go. Like,
that's it.
Or they're gonna be like, no, sit down. Like, and so if you have something in your spirit and you feel like it's something you want to do and your friends are shaming you for it, because look, there's a podcast that I don't listen to, but I need to, called Good Moms, Bad Choices.
Ooh,
right?
I love this.
You have
I
got
want to listen to it. It sounds like
right?
I would love it.
You would love it. But they're just these girls who like their moms and they smoke weed and they just, they're like, but it's the same. It's okay. But I love it because they are their tribe. They're like, it's okay to do these things. And your real tribe are the people who are gonna be like, it's okay to be you, but you have to be clear on who you are in order to build that tribe.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. No, 100%. 100%. I think about my friends in Brooklyn and even like my broader network of friends, because I have friends kind of everywhere. I have friends that are moms, I have friends that are not moms, but I think it's like it's like family. Like, it's like a supportive sisterhood, and we're all trying to support who we are all in the process of becoming. And like, the whole goal is to always be becoming, like always be becoming who you are, not just aspiring to things, but to like truly be becoming. My friends are there when I'm at the rock bottom, and they're there to celebrate the wins and everything in between. And I try, when I sit my ass down, to do the same for them. And I think, as women, like you were talking about building friends as you get older, I just always want to be in community. Like, I think I always have, I didn't always know what it meant to pour into it. I always like attracted community in some ways, but I think as I've gotten older and in many ways, like, being a mom has also taught me, like, having a teenager is like a feedback loop, and my child be having things to say, and I think that interaction has been a teacher for me in sort of what it means to pour into community, and you in many ways give what you get. And so you get what you give, I should say. And I think until we're in the ground or cremated, whatever people's choices are, we have an opportunity to exist as fully as we'd like in this world. And I know we often think money is a limitation, or the next thing is a limitation, or, not being partnered is a limitation. And I think they are just opportunities. I think they're opportunities to work through and work around. And we deserve that, especially as women. Like, we deserve that. As moms, we deserve that. You brought another life in this world. Like, you freaking deserve.
Honey, come on. If anybody does, you definitely deserve it.
You deserve. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I also like to say, and I'm a jump off mom guilt, but I also want to remind you all that mom guilt is normal. Like, I always say, like, it doesn't matter how exceptionally you are momming, like, you're going to experience it at some level in some area because you love your kids, right? Like, it's just, you love your kids and you want the best for them, or whatever you believe that is. And so it's normal. It's just as normal as toddlers having tantrums. Like nothing has gone wrong if you feel guilty. Like, but what we're not going to do is let mom guilt run our life. Like this is just not what we're going to do. Like this is not what we're going to do. So Cherae has been to, how many countries have you been to, child?
Ooh, probably like 60 something now.
Ridiculous. Like
I can't stop counting. I just be going.
She just be going. Okay, so lots. And this is by yourself, right? This is with Trace. This is with groups. This is with booze. So any type of travel you could be thinking of right now, right? Ray has done the thing, right? So what I want to know is your magic, okay? Like what are the methods that you use in order to, save for travel, pay for travel, how do you schedule your travel in your busy schedule and find the time in the schedule, like how far in advance? What are some of the strategies you potentially use to prepare your tribe to take care of Trace in your absence? Right? Or just these type of things. Like how are you making these things happen?
Yeah. So I think on the money side, I'm a horrible saver. I'm getting better, but I definitely, fortunately, I've gotten to a level of earnings where I generally could take a reasonable trip without a lot of like big preparation. But there's some bigger trips that I want to do that I do like sight unseen money. Like I probably have like 6 different places my money goes when I get paid because I can't see the money. If I see the money, we outside. Like if I see the money, we outside. I'm doing dinners like I'm Rick Ross. Like we buying the menu. We doing like I am a drug dealer as soon as the money is in my hands. Like let's do it all. Like just full on. But so I can't see the money. Like I cannot. It has to go. And I put a big chunk of my budget towards travel. Like $500 per check. Like I'm like, travel. Like, like I definitely prioritize that more than most things. Like even clothes, I love clothes, but like now I do Rent the Runway. Why? Because I can't just be buying clothes. Like this is too much stuff. And so I'm like, no stuff, no clothes all the time. Just I'm gonna choose these 5 things and I'm gonna be brand new when I'm in them. And I'm gonna send them back. Like that's, so I think like just like really prioritizing like those travel dreams and like putting the money away to do them or being willing, if it's not saving, being willing to like, all right, well, I ain't gonna be able to do as much, in this moment because I'm really trying to take this trip. And so I definitely do that a lot. Like my girlfriends and I, 10 of us went to London to see Beyonce. Like we knew we were going to do it. One friend booked it. We all made payments to her. So it was just like, we just figured it out. But it was just like, I was very broke in June because I went to see Beyonce in London, So I think that's part of it. The other thing is like your credit cards matter. I have a Chase Sapphire Preferred and a Delta Sky Miles Platinum. And so between the Chase, and I use hotels.com for my hotel bookings, even though it's not always the best rate, those free nights add up. So between my Chase card, my Delta card, and my hotels.com, I'm often getting at least a night or 2 comped or free. I'm getting, a better flight rate or sometimes getting my trip with miles. I think we spend so much money in our day-to-day. Like I really don't use my debit card as my day-to-day spending. I spend with my points earning cards, like for everything, groceries, Ubers, everything. And I literally pay off my credit card like at the end of the week. Like I spend all my weekly spend on the credit card, then I pay it off with my bank account because spending money on my debit card when they don't give me no miles, no points, like doesn't make any sense. I'm spending the same money. Best believe I want to make that money work for me when it's time for these travels. So that's definitely like a financial choice that I make. And it really, really helps because I look up and there's $500 in my Chase preferred rewards that I can apply to a flight. And a lot of the, like on Chase at least, they also negotiate flight rates that are different than you might find outside of it. And so that's also a thing, like on the kind of credit card money stuff. On the preparation side, I've gotten a lot better. I used to just be dropping the child and hoping for the best. I've graduated in my momming, at my big age. And so, I try to leave a list. I try to make sure like I do like a little doc, or I'll do a note and I'll be like, these are all the things he has to do. He's a teenager now, so it's a lot easier. He knows what he's supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. But sometimes he try to get over. So I'll be like, he got to do this work before he's up all night on the PlayStation. Mm-hmm. So, I try to just like leave guidance and leave money so that mm-hmm. like that person doesn't have like a financial burden. Like that's definitely something I avoid. On the travel itself, it's interesting. I'm either like OD at planning or I don't want to plan nothing. Mm-hmm. So I think my number one travel thing is I'd like to feel like I'm there. I'm not like a stay on the resort kind of traveler. Mm-hmm. Like I definitely like to be in it. Like I'd be like, where are the people doing the thing that don't nobody know? I want to be there. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely like how I travel. Like one of my favorite recent trips is I went to Grenada in August and I'm obsessed. I'm so obsessed with Grenada that before I left Grenada, I decided to do my 40th birthday trip to Grenada because that is how obsessed with Grenada that I am. And so, girl, read your email. It's in your inbox.
Okay, like, oh my God, like
from September 1st, I hadn't even.
Like, let me tell y'all, like, for somebody who's been to so many countries to literally just be like, this is what we coming back. I'm like, this must be something going on in Grenada.
I don't be going back.
Oh, like
fun things.
Yes.
But I think for me, the countries that are my favorite, it's rarely about like the things that they have, and it's more about the people that I've met mm-hmm. and feeling connected in that way. And interestingly enough, it also saves you money. I went to Grenada thinking of all the excursions I was going to have to buy. I ain't booked nothing. Mm-hmm. The way I was just with the people and it was the best. Like it was just the best. Now I tend to plan a lot of my travel around scuba diving because my son and I are both scuba divers. And so we do at least one diving trip every year. And that's like one anchored trip. And even those trips we dive and then we like eat ice cream and do nothing. Mm-hmm. So like we dive, we get, milkshakes. They got to have a milkshake. They got to have I got to have the things he likes. But I really try to. And then when I'm planning, I just kind of budget per day. Like I'm like, all right, I can drop $200 a day. Half of this is going to be on excursion and half of this is going to be on food. Mm-hmm. And on hotels, I am a boutique hotel person. I do not like big hotels. I cannot deal with them at all. It makes my skin itch. I can't do it. I love a small, when we were in Colombia, I had Inez the last day she was there. My favorite hotel in Colombia looks like we at somebody's house.
Honey,
it is like this little
somebody's house in the jungle. Like
it's got leaves coming down through the inside. It is my favorite. I am obsessed with it. And it was $60 a night. And trust me, it's nice. Like they got a cute place. It's like a nice place. But I really like locally owned places that like someone's been thoughtful about. And I'm a big design person. So like I know that like it doesn't have to be $500 a night for the design to be good. And I'm not going to be in there all night anyway. So unless I'm doing like vacay with Bay and we really plan on being in that room, I don't really need all the bells and whistles. And I want it to be comfortable and I need to be safe and I need it to be cute, but I don't over index on that. So maybe like hotels is a place where like I'm probably not a stickler in the way that like some folks are. And that really helps me because that takes a big part of your travel budget. On flights, I mean, I know all the rules. I rarely follow them. I probably end up overpaying for my flights because I'll be waiting. But I think I save a lot on the other end. But yeah, I think some places just come to you. Like there's like the way I got to Grenada, my son leaves, like kind of like Inez did when she was little. My son leaves every summer. He goes to camp. And so I always travel as much as I can in the summer. But Google has a feature where you can search by region. So you can say, I'm coming from New York and I want to go somewhere in the Caribbean or somewhere in Europe or somewhere in Africa. And Google will show you the prices on Google Flights for everywhere. So when I went to Grenada, I was like, I know I want to scuba dive. I haven't been diving all summer. I want there to be Black people. And I would prefer it's a direct flight under $500. So those are the things I said in my head, like based on my budget. And so I went, New York City to the Caribbean. And I saw all the options. And what was available for those criteria was Puerto Rico, St. Kitts, and Grenada. And Grenada was the furthest away. So I felt like the flight was the most value. So I picked Grenada. I ain't know nobody in Grenada. I hadn't thought about Grenada one time. Never thought about it. Now it's like definitely top 5. But
Wow.
But I say that to say I wasn't bullish. I wasn't like, it's gotta be Greece. It's gotta be like, so there are plenty of places, especially now that I'm traveling more for leisure and less for work, at least on my international trips. I don't always decide the place first. Sometimes my budget decides where I'm going to go. Sometimes, what the flight deal is decides where I'm going to go. So I think like being open to how the universe conspires for you to get to a place also can be like a way to travel, keep your budget in a good place, and be surprised by a destination. That's one of my absolute favorite things, is like being surprised by a place that I didn't really have any expectations of.
I love all of these, like, because, so the way I approach travel is very similar to you in that I use my main money, not my leftover money. Right? Like, and I think a lot of times when people look at people who they consider to be travelers or influencers or whatever, they're like, just how? And I'm like, honey, these nails might be a mess. These toes, probably a mess. These eyebrows, I don't even know. I ain't seen lashes, but maybe once every 3 years. Never get this hair did, but I bet you I've been to 4 countries this year. Like,
That's it.
Like,
That's it. I don't got no inches. I don't got Beyonce's inches at all.
None. And I love the idea of Rent the Runway, because I'm not a clothes person, so that's not even a thing for me. But if you are a clothes person, you can still be fresh for the low.
For the low.
Like, because,
1 monthly charge.
like, because the way that you make room for travel in your budget is by making room for travel in your budget, right? And making it a priority and using your main money, not being like, I'm gonna spend all these things over here that you have to spend or you believe you have to spend, and then be like, if I have some left over, then I might be going on a trip. No, like, she got a whole automated 500 on top immediately going for a trip that she don't even know she going on yet. Like, she ain't chose a destination. She don't know when she going. But it's the 500 in the account, right? Like, so
that's it. Because when it's time to hit book,
you're right.
The transaction must be approved.
It must be approved. Like, and I think that is the best thing, like, to do. And I also am a proponent of use your travel card for all the things. I'm about to release a checklist, right, for people to have. And it's basically, I'm going to call it Unlock Your Travel Funds. And it's going to be a checklist of using your expenses and your bills to fund your travel, right? These are the things you need to set up to use your bills and your expenses to fund your travel. Like, if you're just a person like, oh, I just cannot drop the 500 in my account, or the 2 or the 1. Okay, fine. You're going to pay these bills either way.
Let me tell you, I pay my rent on my Chase credit card.
Oh, honey, let me tell you. That's exactly what I was about to tell you. So listen, I didn't know this, but I just found this out. So American Express has a checking account now. checking account. You get points. You get Amex points for using your debit card or paying from that account.
Now see here.
So, like, usually you can't. There are a lot of bills that you can't pay with a credit card, but I bet you I'm about to get one of them accounts because those Amex points are going to come in handy when it comes time to book a trip. Like,
absolutely.
So yeah, and that's another way to use your bills and your expenses, right? Like, you're going to do it anyway. So, and I like, because I know this about you, like, you will book the flight at the last of the minute. But one thing she's able to do that is because of the Delta Sky Miles, right? So she's not paying the 1,000 plus that you might have to pay if you book it at the last minute. She may be paying 400, right? So she's gonna use up her points, but they points anyway. Like,
they points anyway. That's what they're having for.
Right. Like, so if you're somebody who, like, you know, maybe you are kind of last minute, like, go with the last minute, but make sure you're prepared. Like, one of the things I talk about is how I always use the Digit app, but now it's called Opportune, right? Where basically you hook it to your account and it learns your spending, so it knows about how much you have left over every month. So it pulls it out for you, right? So it's not in the account, right? With regard to, like, money, right?
You love it. Can't see it.
Literally, this is what happened to me in Zimbabwe. So we were flying back to when we got back from Zimbabwe. So the flight for Colombia, right? So we went to Colombia to celebrate 20 years of being sorority sisters in Delta Sigma Theta. Cherae is my line sister. And I didn't know how I was going to play for that flight for Colombia because I just came back from Zimbabwe and Belize, right? So I'm like, I don't know where these coins coming from. What had happened was when I went to Zimbabwe, I turned off my Opportune app because I was like, I want to use the extra money in my account in order to buy stuff in Zimbabwe, right? But me knowing me, I also made it so that it was going to automatically come back on in 3 months, right? I had forgot about that. So I was like, I had turned it off. So that's why I was like, I don't know, like, where this money going to come from. So I was in Zimbabwe for 4.5 months. So there was 2 months that I was there that it was on, and it was a few months that I was here when it was on. So I was like, I don't know where this money going to come from, child. I was like, let me just check the Opportune app. Girl went over there, had $500.
We love it. We love it. We love it.
But see, also know myself, like, I'm not going to be the person to check that change and put it nowhere. Like, so it got to automatically happen. So you just got to also know yourself. Like, if you're going to be the last minute person, you need to have the miles, right? If you're going to be the last minute person, or you're not going to remember the side, you need to make it automated. Like, you need to just
can't see the money.
Right. Just, it's okay. It's okay. Like, we're responsible adults, but we're also just who we are. Like, so just be okay with you being you.
Yes.
Okay? Yes. So, I'm trying to think of what else, y'all. This is some good stuff. I hope y'all have been writing down the tea because this is the tea.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I would say is for you, like, so I run into a lot of moms who are not where we are in the journey, right? Right. From a mindset perspective, like, a lot of them are really considering going on a trip. Like, they know they need it, right? When I came back from Belize, all of my mom friends was like, oh my God, Belize looked amazing. I really need a getaway. I really need to go on a trip, blah, 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 blah. And usually most of them get stuck there. Like, I really need, right? But they're taking no action to do it. And so that's actually what I help them do. Like, remove the life obstacles, whether it's the money piece, whether it's the tribe piece, whether it's getting your husband on board piece, like, whatever it is that we need to do so that you can go. So what I'm wondering for you is, like, for the moms who are like, they're kind of trying to make the decision, but they're going back and forth on it, or whether it is valuable enough, or if it's important enough, or they deserve it. Like, what advice or what, would you say to them about, like, how having these getaways or or doing the adult fun has benefited your life or who you are as a woman?
Yeah. I think that one of my favorite compliments that people give me is that I feel light and childlike. And it is one of my, I turn 40 in 2 months. And it is one of my absolute favorite things because given some of the life experiences I've had, there's a world where I feel heavy or jaded or bitter. And I am not any of those things. I have moments where I'm sad or where I'm hurt or all of those things. But I truly believe that traveling and going to places and being able to be reminded so explicitly of how expansive the world is and how many blessings have been bestowed upon me, especially the way I travel and the type of places I travel. Travel forces an energy of gratitude for me because I could have been born anywhere in the world. Where you're born can be a privilege. And I think especially those of us in the US, especially Black people in the US, I think we often are so caught up in what's wrong in this country and the challenges we have, which are very real and we should very much hold space for them. But we have no idea what it's like to be born in another place and to deal with some of the classism and some of the extremes, just some things, there's positives and negatives anywhere. Cause I also was asking why I wasn't born in Grenada and why I wasn't born there. Like, I really don't understand why I wasn't born in Grenada. But what I will say is travel has allowed me to live lighter, like in my spirit. Yes, it's engages I'm a super curious person. I want to know everything about all the things all the time. I wanted to be known, but like travel and just the ability to just widen the aperture of how I'm taking in the world, like has just been transformative to my spirit. And I think whether you go on a trip every other year or you can make that once a year, multiple times a year, just having that reminder that in some ways you're just one speck in 8 billion and that there are so many permutations of life happening at the same time and being able to just switch gears and switch scenes. It's such a powerful gift. My first trip to Africa was 2010 Sierra Leone. And I remember at the end of that trip trying to tell everybody I met, oh my God, you got to come visit me. You got to come visit me. And it was the first time I realized like that this blue passport I had is a huge privilege because they were like, we cannot come and visit you in the United States, girl.
That's right. Wow.
You finna sponsor me? Do I got a job? Because America ain't let me in.
Yeah.
And I think I was 22, 23. I don't know. I'm old now. I don't know how old I was. But yeah, it was the first time I realized that even the ability to just get up and go damn near wherever you want to go is like such a unique privilege and responsibility for me and my values, a responsibility to go and see and experience and connect and just do as much as you can with your life and with what you're able to see while you're here, like on this blue dot. I just think it just offers you an opportunity for yourself. It's really not about the pictures you take or like, don't get me wrong. I love a content. I love content. This is my favorite thing. Yeah. I am my own personal Hype Williams, Martin Scorsese. I'm all of it. Listen, I love the contents, but it really just is about inside. It's just about giving your soul a boost. Yes. That's it. Like whatever that looks like, you're an adventure traveler, you're a sit on the beach traveler, it really doesn't matter. But just giving your soul a boost and being sweet to yourself. That's like a thing I'm trying to take on right now, is this idea of like just giving myself sweetness. And travel is one way that is very sweet to me.
Mm-hmm. I love the idea of being sweet to yourself. Like, that is so good. And I hope that, people who see this really embrace that. Because I think specifically as moms, like, we are so nurturing to so many people and so sweet to so many people, right? And so caring and patient and considerate and, all these things, but we don't always do that for ourselves. Right? We don't always do that for ourselves or see ourselves through that lens. And I think, giving yourself space to be sweet to yourself and caring and nurturing of yourself is so important for you and for your children. And I love the fact that you talked about it being an opportunity and, a responsibility. When I think about Black women, right? Black women in the United States, generations ago, they could not even see themselves outside of that role. And so they never even considered it an option to take a vacation without their kids, right? Without their family. Like, it wasn't even a thing. Like, adding a thing. And so now that we are women in this, generation, and we can do this. Like, we have apps like Wiggle, we have Airbnb, we have Instagram, we have people like me showing you how to do it, teaching you we have so many resources to do it. And in addition to that, we have the Blue Passport, right? Like, which will get you into pretty much anywhere, right? It wasn't until Tawana and I started traveling together as a married couple that I realized just how difficult it is to travel without the Blue Passport. Like, it's just, even if you have a green card, even if you have the paperwork, it's still a whole thing. Like, and so we have all of these resources given to us that we take for granted, right? And we focus on what we don't have. Right. And we focus on, the limitations of this country, as opposed to focusing on the benefits of this country and using them to get to whatever it is we want. Right. Whatever it is you want is possible. It's absolutely possible. And I agree with you, like, with regard to, like, it is a responsibility. It is a responsibility. Like, there are ancestors for generations who I like when I think about it. So my very first trip to the continent was with Cherae, and that trip was transformational, but it wasn't as transformational as the second trip to the continent with Cherae, which was to Ghana. And that trip was just like, oh, I must come here as often as possible. I have to. Right. And that is because when I went to Ghana, I just realized that, like, for me to even exist as Inez in Philadelphia, at the time I was a software engineer who had graduated from, a Black school and an Ivy League school and all of these things, my ancestors had to have been the cream of the crop to have survived what they went through in order for me to even be who I am, right? Like, so it is a responsibility, right? Even in the vein of being a mom, it is a responsibility because you have the responsibility to your children, but you also have a responsibility to your ancestors, right? To the people who have helped you and have gone through a time when we couldn't do this, or it wasn't the norm, or we didn't have access, in order for you to have the opportunity. So you have to take it. Like, it is a responsibility for you to take it, so that now you are creating a new floor, right, for your children and your daughters and your sons. And even if if you're watching this video, you don't got no kids, like,
for yourself,
for yourself, exactly, for yourself, okay,
for yourself,
for you, okay. So yes, like, this has been so Good, Cherae. Like, I am so glad to have you on my channel. Like, I'm so glad you accept this interview. Like, there's so much. I feel like you're definitely going to be back because there's so much more I feel like you have to share as you continue to go on this journey, and as Trace gets older and you become an empty nester, and then your life
on his husband and have some more babies.
right, and you find his husband like in just like the next stages of like what your journey of travel and motherhood and blending the two is gonna look like. I'm just excited for it. So thank you so much for joining me. So if you all actually let people know where they can find you, like
where can y'all find me? On my website at CheraeRobinson.com.
Okay.
And also on Instagram. I love the gram. I know it's old now and people are on TikTok. I'm not getting on TikTok. It's Sassy Rae, SASYRAE.
Yes, I love
That's
it.
How to find me.
Y'all make sure you go check her out. She is amazing at content, I have to say.
I really love it. I love it content.
It is amazing. Like, and I just want y'all to know that, if you're someone who if you're a mom and you want to take a trip, it's possible for you to, like, if you feel stuck, or if you feel like you also may be in the place where you feel like it's more work, right, than it is fun, right? You get to a place you're like, I got all this on my plate. I ain't got time to do A, B, C. I don't have time to, like, the reason why you feel that way is because, one, it's kind of normal, because even as travelers, like, who have traveled all the time, like, we still feel those same feelings. It's not a different thing, but we have systems that we have implemented. We have habits, right? We have support from people. We have communities, right? Like, so the reason why we're able to get through these things is because of those things. It's not because they don't exist for us. Right? Like, and so I am building a community of moms who, not only want to take a trip, but are going to take a trip and are supporting each other in taking these trips. And just one of the things that I know for a fact is, like, nothing will change your life more than as a mom than adult fun, right? Like, so whether it is a staycation for a weekend in your own city, brunch with your friends every other weekend, like, whatever it is, whether it's going to Grenada, right, for your 40th birthday, like, whatever it is, like, these are the things that is going to change your life. It's going to help you really understand who you are and, what you want. And it's going to give you the confidence that you need to be able to mom at the level you want to mom at, but also just be able to live as a woman at the level that you want to live at. So this is something that I can help you with. This is something I help myself with. This is something my friends do all the time. So if you're interested, make sure you go and click the link in my description to book a call to work more closely with me on, like, implementing the habits and the systems and the techniques to confidently be able to take your getaway. And then also, Cherae does not know this, but she will be involved. She don't even know. Make sure you also click the link to sign up for my email list, because I am planning the first ever one-day virtual summit on kid-free vacations.
Oh, I love that.
Right. We're going to be talking about girls' getaways. We're going to be talking about vacations. We're going to be talking about solo vacays. It don't matter what type of traveler you are. Even if you don't even know what type of traveler you are, I'm going to bring on moms who are doing it, moms who have mastered it, so they can give you some of the tips and the tricks so that you can be able to confidently take the vacations you want to take. So make sure you sign up for the email list, because they'll be spilling the tea. And I think that event is going to happen very early next year. So these are the things. Also, last thing before we leave, Cherae, what is your next getaway? Is it going to be the birthday? Like, what's your next trip?
Oh no, girl. We got to go. We got to go before then. My next getaway is more local. I'm going to Baltimore for my homecoming, Morgan State University homecoming, and I'm going to Dallas. So I'm going to go from New York to Baltimore for homecoming weekend, because it's Columbus Day weekend, 3-day weekend. Then I'm going to go to Dallas to watch Jadena and Janelle Monáe and visit my good friend Carmen. So I have like a lot of friends to visit. So I think that's my next getaway. I'm trying to keep it domestic until my birthday, but you never know what
never
happens in the group chat. You don't know. You don't know. You
I
don't know.
love it. I love it.
So
Well, girl,
yeah.
enjoy that. Enjoy yourself. Live your
All
life.
right.
And y'all make sure that you subscribe. And until we meet again, stay tripping.